take out your phone right now. Go ahead, I'll wait. Open any social media app. Scroll for 10 seconds. How many lives did you just witness? How many moments, experiences, achievements, declarations? Dozens? Hundreds? And here's the real question. How connected do you feel? If you're like most people, the answer is not very. In fact, you might feel more isolated than before you open the app. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't a personal failing. This is the hidden existential cost of social media. The strange phenomenon where platforms designed for connection leave us feeling more profoundly alone than ever before in human history. We're living through the greatest paradox of our time. We have more ways to connect than ever before. We can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. We carry in our pockets a device that gives us access to billions of people. And yet, loneliness has reached epidemic proportions. Existential isolation, the feeling of being fundamentally disconnected from others and from life itself, has become the defining experience of the digital age. But this isn't just about feeling sad when Instagram makes you compare your life to others. This goes deeper. This is about what social media does to the very structure of human existence, to our capacity for authentic being, to what Martin Buber called the I-thou relationship, the genuine encounter between human beings. Let me take you into the philosophy that explains why your 1,000 Facebook friends can't fill the void of one real conversation, why your carefully curated life feels like a prison, and why the more connected we become, the more isolated we feel. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote extensively about the look, le regard, the experience of being seen by another. For Sartre, when someone looks at us, we suddenly become aware of ourselves as objects in their world. We experience what he called being for others. This creates a fundamental tension in human existence. We are both subject, the one experiencing, and object, the one being experienced by others. Now imagine this dynamic amplified by 1,000. That's social media. Every post, every photo, every status update is created with the look in mind. We don't just experience being for others occasionally. It becomes our default mode of existence. We live in a state of perpetual performance, constantly curating ourselves for an invisible audience that never stops watching. But here's where it gets existentially terrifying. The audience isn't really there. We perform for an abstraction, a number, a metric. We've replaced Sartre's concrete look of another human being with the algorithmic gaze of the platform. We exist for others who aren't actually present, who aren't actually encountering us, who aren't actually seeing us. This creates what I call existential vertigo, the dizzying feeling of being everywhere and nowhere at once. You're visible to hundreds or thousands, but seen by no one. You're connected to everyone, but touching no one. You exist in a state of perpetual presence that is actually a profound absence. Martin Buber distinguished between two fundamental ways of relating, I-it and I-thou. In an I-it relationship, we treat the other as an object, a thing to be used, categorized, or consumed. In an I-thou relationship, we encounter the other as a whole being, meeting them with our whole being. It's the difference between using someone and meeting someone. Social media, by its very design, transforms all relationships into I-it relationships. People become profiles, lives become content, experiences become posts. We don't encounter others, we consume their curated representations. We don't share ourselves, we market our personal brand. And here's the existential tragedy. I-it relationships can never satisfy our deep need for connection. We can accumulate thousands of I-it relationships, followers, friends, connections, and still feel profoundly alone. Because what we're seeking isn't networking, it's encounter. Not visibility, but recognition. Not likes, but love. The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas spoke about the face of the other, the ethical demand that another person's presence makes on us. When we truly encounter another person face to face, we're called to responsibility, to response, to relationship. But social media gives us faces without faces, profile pictures without presence, images without encounter. We scroll through hundreds of faces, but we never meet the face of the other in Levinas's sense. We see representations, not presences. And our soul knows the difference. Our existential self recognizes the simulation and hungers for the real. This brings us to what Sherry Turkle calls being alone together, physically isolated but digitally connected, surrounded by others but existentially alone. We've created a world where we're never alone but always lonely, never disconnected but never truly connected. The Korean-German philosopher Byung-Chul writes about the transparency society, how digital culture demands that everything be visible, shareable, optimized for communication. But authentic human existence requires opacity, mystery, depth. When everything must be transparent, we lose the intimate shadows where real connection happens. Think about your deepest friendships, your most meaningful relationships. They weren't built on status updates and highlight reels. They were built in the unshareable moments, the 3 a.m. conversations, the comfortable silences, the messy vulnerabilities that don't photograph well. They were built in what Han calls the negativity of the unshareable, everything that resists being turned into content. But social media trains us to turn everything into content. Every experience becomes a potential post. Every thought becomes a possible tweet. Every moment becomes an opportunity for documentation rather than presence. We become, in the words of Guy Debord, spectators of our own lives. This spectatorship creates a unique form of existential alienation. We're alienated not just from others, but from our own experience. We live at one remove from our lives, always curating, always performing, always optimizing for engagement. We become strangers to ourselves, managing our image rather than living our truth. The existential psychologist R.D. Laing wrote about the divided self, the split between our true self and our false self, between who we are and who we present ourselves to be. Social media institutionalizes this division. We all become split personalities, managing multiple versions of ourselves across multiple platforms, losing track of which one is real. But maybe none of them are real. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the real self can't be posted, shared, or liked. Maybe it exists only in the spaces between the posts, in what we don't share, in who we are when no one's watching and we're not documenting it. This connects to what Sartre called bad faith, the denial of our fundamental freedom and responsibility by pretending we are only what others see us as being. Social media is a machine for producing bad faith. It encourages us to identify with our online persona, to believe we are our profile, to forget that we're free to be otherwise. The anxiety you feel when your post doesn't get enough likes, that's not vanity. That's existential anxiety. It's the anxiety of having confused your curated image with your actual existence, of having staked your being on metrics that can never measure what matters. Heidegger wrote about thrownness, how we're thrown into existence without our choosing. But now we're thrown into digital existence too. We're expected to have an online presence, to maintain our digital selves, to exist in the virtual realm, and this isn't a choice anymore. It's a demand. Try getting a job without LinkedIn. Try maintaining friendships without social media. We're thrown into digital being whether we like it or not. But Heidegger also wrote about authenticity, the possibility of owning our existence, of being true to our own most possibilities, rather than falling into what he called the they self, Disman. Social media is the ultimate expression of the they self. We post what they like. We share what they share. We become what they reward with engagement. The notifications, the likes, the comments, they all function to keep us in the they self, to prevent the anxiety of authentic existence by giving us constant feedback about